Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the advanced community who have worked so hard. It's lovely to have you all here tonight, even though I'm used to having half a group of listeners as permaculture people, so I'm not sure I'm in friendly territory, but I hope I am. I would like to thank Liz Bastian, my co-founder of Blue Mountains Permaculture Institute, who believed in me that we could start a permaculture institute based on giving educational awards for people who are illiterate and unknown, and doing fantastic work. So a different scale from these advance awards tonight. I'd just like to mention something really exciting of all importance to all us Australians that we can be proud of. At our wonderful welcome to the Gadigal by the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, those of you who have read Bruce Pascoe's book will realise that Australia had cultivated food systems 20, 30, 40,000 years before the Tigris-Euphrates. Now, for those of you who know anything about ancient history, always say, oh, the cradle of agriculture, where people grew foods and crops and stored them. In effect, it's Australia, everyone. It mightn't have been those of us who are here tonight, but it's an Australian thing. We grew the food. If I could start with something a little tangential, and I won't talk long, I'd just like you to think of one of the most lucky things that happened to you in your life. Was it the birth of a child? Was it the job you got? Was it reprieve from a dreadful disease? Was it the big mortgage the bank gave you for which you were so grateful? I'd just like to talk to you about the luckiest time in my life was when I was in Lesotho, small country in Africa, living in a village, and the people there had a market. And every day I'd walk past the market and there'd be 3 tomatoes and 2 onions and a carrot. And I thought, they haven't got much to sell. Now, I was an agriculturalist from Sydney University. I knew how to grow commodities. I had no knowledge of how to help people grow food where they were in need. So I used to look at these people selling the food they should have been eating and wonder why I didn't have the knowledge and skills that they could have food where they lived. If you think about it, to be able to grow your own food is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's such a basic human need. It's like looking after your own water. So I came back to Australia, and by some sort of luck, someone introduced me to permaculture. And I took off running. It put together environmental science. It put together horticulture. It put together agricultural science. Used everything I knew. So, will you put up your hand if you've heard of permaculture? Oh, I thought none of you would know. I have to back off a bit, but I'll give you a definition anyway. It's integrated science. It's integrated applied science where you use it to restore landscapes and communities. So imagine if someone gave you the gift where you can restore this landscape and this community, and you could carry it in your head and your hands. And you don't need a company, and you don't even need a computer. Most of my work, as you saw, is done in places where there's no electricity. And you can carry it lightly, and it's adaptable globally because of its ethics and principles, and locally because we work on traditional techniques. What a gift. Now suppose that touches the chord in you that says, I love this. The best gift I could ever be given was to take this to people who can't get it unless I offer to go there. And suppose you feel indignant about injustice, poverty, war, defence, militarisation. I'm a Quaker. That will explain something. That you want peace and cooperation, and you have a tool to do it which is light to carry. Life has such meaning and fun and despair and horrors that you feel as if you're really alive. So for 40 years now, I've travelled around the world teaching permaculture, and one of the things that's wonderful, and I'm going to ask you to put up your hands again, who of you really enjoys living an ethical life? A life that tests your ethics, right? Yes? A life that tests whether you want to live with integrity, you want to live a life. Yeah, it's exciting. It might sound dull, it might sound like moral philosophy. It's not. It's just fun to say, is my money going into destructive things? Is my behaviour leading to people's enslavement? Am I contributing to a better world? I actually don't ask those questions, but sometimes I do. Most of the time I don't. Okay, so in permaculture what we have is a set of ethics, and the first ethic is strange. So the first ethic, and this is an Australian invention, permaculture, the first ethic is to care for the earth. So if we look at living as if we care for the earth, it means we might have to live differently. And my big problem, and if there's a psychologist here who can help me, is that you have to model it. So you have to say no to a plastic bag, no to something that's made on slave labour, and then you look like a goody-goody, which is a big pain too. Enough time, huh? I'm going to stop because it's waving. Okay, but what we have are principles and strategies. All I want to say that permaculture is not any idea that's been supported by governments, except a few countries like Malawi or Cameroon. It's absorbed into universities. However, it's a swarm movement. Do you know a swarm movement? Swarm movements are movements that travel across the world to many countries under the radar of advertising and email and the big publicity. We're in 160 countries. There are probably 6,000 courses taught across the world today. Teachers say, I think I'd like to do this. There is no world organisation. There's no qualifying body. It is like a network that can't be stopped. It moves into urban areas. It moves into island permaculture. It moves wherever it's required. I've got people looking at me here and people looking there. So I'm going to look. They clap me down. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for listening to my passion. Thank you.